Help support Name Explained by liking this video, leaving a comment and subscribing to the channel. The name Baltic is thought to come from one of two origins. It either derives from the Lithuanian baltas, which means white, or the Scandinavian balta, meaning belt/straight. Which one of these are correct we aren't exactly sure, but they're both very valid candidates. The Baltic is very snowy and well white, so that idea does make sense. However, the belt/straight idea makes sense too, as the Baltic Sea is narrow like a strait or belt of water, and in fact contains many belts and straits. So like I said, it really could be either of these ideas. The term of Baltic is usually applied to one or two things, either the Baltic Sea, which is in northern Europe, or the nations of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, which are collectively known as the Baltic States. However, there is something else that can have Baltic applied to it, and that's the many islands that are in the Baltic Sea. These can, unsurprisingly, be called the Baltic Islands. What's great about these islands is the huge variety you'll find across them, from beaches to small villages with old world charm. What I also find interesting about these islands is that unlike other clusters of islands, they don't all belong to just one nation. As the Baltic Sea serves as an aquatic border for many nations, it means that these many nations have islands in the Baltic Sea, meaning a plethora of languages are present across the islands that leads us with a nice variety of names, from Germanic names in the west to Balto-Slavic names in the east. Nations with islands in the Baltic Sea include Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Finland, Estonia and Poland. So today let's look into a selection of these islands, from the biggest, most populated and most interesting to us. I'll look into how they got their names. However, it must be remembered that this part of the world is incredibly ancient, and a lot of its ancient history is murky, so apologies if some of these etymologies aren't as conclusive as some others we have on the channel. Not every name has a clear explanation, but it would be boring if they all did anyway. First up we have the biggest island in the Baltic, Gotland, which belongs to Sweden. Gotland is seen as being an island lost in time, somewhere with an old world charm. I've even seen it be called the Viking Island due to the history and the people that have been there. However, it is not named after the Vikings. This is a seriously loaded name which has a history containing all kinds of confusion. A lot of places are named after an ancient tribal people, but Gotland might be named after three. These are the Goths, Geats or the Goths. The Goths are the most well known of these three people. The Goths were a North Germanic tribe of people who famously played a large role in bringing down the Roman Empire. The Goths was the name for the people who lived in Gotland. So why the confusion? We know for sure that the Goths lived there, so why not simply say Gotland is named after them? Why even mention the Goths? Well, this is because many believe that the Goths and the Goths were one and the same. Writers of the time didn't really differentiate between the two either, so that makes things harder. And on top of that we have the Geats too. The Geats were another group of people who lived in Sweden at the time. Famously, Beowulf was a Geat. However, as we know so little about them other than in these poems, it's believed they may not have existed at all, or at least were only partially real. Whether Gotland was named after the Goths or Goths or Geats, or if these three names are all for the same people, we don't know for sure. Even where the names come from are all tied together and somewhat unknown. It's a topic I'd love to cover in more detail, and Goth unto itself is a deeply interesting word with a long history. But for now, all you really need to know is that Gotland is named after one of these guys. Over in the east of the Baltic we have the island of Saaremaa. This large island is part of Estonia. The name of Saaremaa doesn't seem to be as confusing as Gotland's, thankfully. In fact, it's quite an odd literal name, as it kind of means the same thing twice. It means island land, coming from ancient Scandinavian roots. In English we often call it Saaremaa Island, so we're calling it Island Land Island. This is something that actually happens quite often. It is known as a tautological name. Another example is the Rika River in Slovenia. This translates into river in English. Sweden's Åland means the same thing, island land. An island of interest in the Baltic is Usedom. While this island is pretty small, it's actually the most populated of all the Baltic islands, and it doesn't belong to just one nation. The island is split between Poland and Germany. There's even fun border crossings on the island. It is one of the more sunny parts of the Baltic, so many come here in the summer months. This has also given it the nickname of the Sunny Island. While the island belongs to Germany and Poland, its name is seemingly of German origin, as it is named after the town of Usedom in the German part of the island. This name, however, is of Slavic origins, meaning river mouth, so much like the island itself, the name is a mix of Germanic and Slavic too. Just straight away from Usedom is Volyn, which is a completely Polish island. Much like with Usedom, this island's name comes from a town on the island, also called Volyn, and the town's name and the island's name are thought to come from the Volhynians who lived on the island. And don't worry, as Germany have an entire island in the Baltic to themselves too, Rügen. This seaside island is named after a tribe of people who live there too, the Lugi. In the Baltic Sea, Finland has a whole chain of islands that are known as the Åland Islands. They sit pretty near neatly between Finland and Sweden, so Swedish is actually spoken on the islands too. The name for these islands is believed to mean riverland, which is odd as there are no rivers really flowing through the islands, though it's thought that the river part of the name meant water initially and then evolved to specifically mean river. It meaning just water makes way more sense, as there is water all around these islands. The largest of the Åland island is called Fasta Åland, which means mainland Åland. As to the islands, this would be the mainland. And finally, I want to talk about Denmark's largest island, which has a name that may sound familiar to some of us, Zealand. Now, the first ever video I made on this channel was all about Old Zealand in regards to New Zealand, and I still get comments telling me that Old Zealand isn't in the Netherlands, but it's in Denmark. And while yes, there is a Zealand in Denmark, the nation was named after one in the Netherlands. But where did this Zealand get its name from? Well, it's thought to have the same meaning as the Dutch Zealand, meaning Sealand, as it's surrounded by sea. It does make sense they'd have similar meanings. Danish and Dutch are both Germanic languages after all. And yes, I know that this island isn't technically part of the Baltic Sea, but it's part of the Danish Straits, but shh. The islands of the Baltic was suggested by two bios, and thanks to their suggestion, they will now be honoured as Name Explain's patron saint of the islands of the Baltic. Do you have a good idea for somewhere that's name could be covered in a Name Explain video? If so, then please consider donating on Patreon. Just $1 a month helps keep the channel running and earns you a weekly chance to suggest somewhere to be turned into a video, and you too could be a Name Explain Patreon saint. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explain, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explain. Hello all, and thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Twitter where I'm at NameExplainYT. On Instagram I'm also NameExplainYT, and on Facebook just search Name Explain. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again thank you all so much.